Do you believe that the consumer price index is a good and true and accurate measure of inflation?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. If you go out to the furniture mart and construct a price index, it hasn't moved very much. I mean, it makes it very tough for comparable store sales when you were selling DVD players at X a few years ago, and now you're selling them at a quarter of X. So there's certain areas that there's been a huge, in effect, deflationary aspects. But I do think the CPI, and like I say, Gross has written about this, but the CPI is not particularly good index. I always get a kick out of when they talk about the core CPI, and then they say that excludes food and energy. Food and energy strike me as pretty core to anything in terms of the average price. I can't think of anything that's much more core. The CPI, as you may or may not know, many years ago had housing figured in directly. The CPI now has a rental, which is an imputed rental type computation. It's still a large portion of the CPI, but it does not reflect the new housing prices and rentals. The rental factor has lagged, in my view, significantly below what housing costs really are for an American family, since housing is a big portion, I don't think it picks it up well. So I would say that the CPI has understated inflation for a great many people. Now, if you're older and you own your own house, I mean, everybody has their own way of living. And I mean, if all you do is drink Coca-Cola all day, Coca-Cola hasn't gone up in price enough, in my view. And my CPI has not changed very much. But for somebody buying a new house versus 6 or 8 years ago and driving 30 or 40 miles to work or having a lot of driving in the family, the CPI has gone up a lot more than the government figures would indicate. Charlie?
Yeah, I see it at Costco, where there's been almost no inflation in the composite product that flows through Costco. And yet in other places you get these dramatic rising figures. I don't feel sorry for the people that pay $27 million for an 8,000-foot condo in Manhattan. If they've had little inflation, I guess it doesn't matter to the rest of us. But it's almost weird the way the situation works in terms of how it comes in just a few places.
If you look at the Costco annual report or the Walmart annual report, these are huge enterprises, and you'll see their LIFO adjustment is just peanuts.
Almost nothing.
At Walmart, it's inconsequential. I just got through reading their annual report, and the LIFO adjustment isn't worth a hiccup, basically. And you were dealing with $200 and some billion worth of sales, and the LIFO adjustment would have picked up changes in prices of that mix overall relative to their inventory level. So in jewelry, because of gold and some things, we had some big LIFO adjustments last year. Steel, we've had big LIFO adjustments. We have a steel service center in Chicago, and we buy a lot of steel at MyTech. And there's a big LIFO adjustment, so it's very uneven. Carpet went no place for 20 years, but because it's petrochemical based, there have been substantial price changes in the carpet business in the last couple of years. And our LIFO, we had a LIFO, a minus LIFO figure in effect 3 years ago, and now we have 100 million or so of LIFO adjustments. So there's been a significant price change there. I think overall, though, for a typical young family, the CPI probably underestimates the burden they have faced in terms of their own living situation.